Our subdivision was called Worthington Estates, but don't let the name fool you. The aluminum-sided houses sat on quarter-acre plots and were nowhere near estate-like. My house was indistinguishable from at least 5 others on my street. One afternoon in the garage, Colin flipped through the arts section and read that Cheap Trick was coming to Columbus. "Oh, we're going to this," he said. For months, I've been cranking At Budokan loud enough to make my sister slam her bedroom door shut. I can still hear the opening seconds. Japanese girls in high howl. Tom Peterson checking his bass. The goosebump-inducing introduction, "All right, Tokyo! Are you ready? Will you please welcome epic recording artists?" Hell yes, I wanted to go see Cheap Trick. But mostly I wanted to go see Cheap Trick with Colin. He was cool, and I was not. He had a fort in his backyard. He had Atari. And unlike anyone else I knew, he'd already been to a rock concert. For his 10th birthday, his mom had taken him to Cleveland to see Kiss. Like all kids, I thought my parents were weird, but they seemed even weirder when compared with the Gowls. Colin's dad sold wood products. His mom stayed home. Solid suburban citizens. My dad was an ex-priest, and my mom was an ex-nun. They'd met in grad school and then left the church to get married. Now my dad was directing a facility that trained blind folks in employment skills, and my mom was teaching English part-time at Columbus Tech. They were both finishing PhDs at Ohio State. Given that my sister and I were the only kids in Worthington with an ex-priest and nun for parents, we were weird by definition. But if I went with Colin to see Cheap Trick, maybe I'd pick up some residual cool. Colin and I scored 7th row seats, then rode the Coda bus downtown to the Ohio Center for the show. It was even more jaw-dropping than I knew it would be. Rick Nielsen's guitar blew my hair back. Bunny Carlos's kick drum socked me in the gut. Tom Peterson's 12-string bass knocked my balls into my throat. Split-second eye contact from debonair frontman Robin Zander had the girls next to me screaming like they were seeing the Beatles at Shea. The arena smelled like perfume, cigarettes, and weed. Piss and puke soaked the bathroom floor. When the band launched into their new single, "She's Tight," the arena rained panties. On the bus ride home, Colin said, "We have to start a band." Like so many life-changing moments, this one came as an afterthought. 6 throwaway words tucked inside 60,000 others as we talked a mile a minute on that bus. The lack of fanfare with which it was said was a testament to the inevitability of my answer. There was no internal debate on my part, no deliberation. Following Colin into battle was already my specialty. Earlier that summer, he decided that I should take over half the paper route. Then he recruited me as his aide-de-camp in a campaign to terrorize his neighbors with cottonelle and rotten eggs. So when Colin told me we were starting a band, I just shrugged and said okay, and that was that. As the bus rolled up High Street past the Ohio State campus, Colin laid out his plan for rock domination. For Christmas, his mom had bought him a Gibson Melody Maker, so naturally he'd be the guitar player. The only instrument I owned was the clarinet I'd played in 3rd grade orchestra. But my dad kept a guitar in his closet, a Martin acoustic he'd strummed when presiding Mass. As soon as I figured out how to play that church guitar, Colin and I would be a 2-headed monster. Colin looked confused. "But I'm the guitar player," he said. "We need 2, don't we?" I caught our reflection in the bus window. We were all knees and knuckles, draped in the bootleg concert shirts we bought for $5 in the parking lot. "Yeah, Colin," I said, "we need 2. Like Paul Stanley and Ace Frehley." "Any schmuck can play the guitar," Colin said. Then he flashed the same smile his dad surely used when selling his line of cedar hangers and shoe trees to department stores. "You, Joe, get to play the bass." I cringed. Bass was only slightly cooler than clarinet. "No, man," Colin said, "bass players are the coolest. Like Gene Simmons, like Tom Peterson." By the time the bus eased into the estates, Colin had given our band a name. Sudden Shock! Exclamation point. And a logo, SS, in 2 stylized lightning bolts. We drew this logo all over the bus seat, SS, lightning bolts. The next passenger must have thought the seat had been occupied by Hitler Youth. The bus pulled away from the curb and we slapped each other 5. Then Colin took off toward his house and I headed toward mine, playing air bass to Cheap Trick's Gonna Raise Hell the whole way home. Now, as if on cue, Colin walks into Smalls. He's met by the doorman who's asking for $5 and a look at Colin's ID. Slim-shouldered and 140 pounds, give or take a few Budweisers, Colin's not much bigger now than he was on that Coda bus. Smiling that son of a salesman smile, he explains that he's with the band. And then he beelines for the bar. So Biggie, he says, what's the beer situation? Biggie pulls 20 wooden tokens from his pocket. Free domestics. Beautiful, Colin says. Dave and Pooch divide the tokens into 4 stacks of 5. Look at us, Colin says. He's holding a to-go coffee with one hand, mussing his hair with the other. Out on tour, all set to rock. He puts his hand on my shoulder and says, we've got our balls back. What he means is, you've got your balls back. Watershed hasn't played a show in 5 months. Not since the August night in Columbus when we celebrated the release of our live CD, 3 Chords and a Cloud of Dust 2. A couple days later, I committed the cardinal sin. I moved away, far away. My wife Kate and I packed our furniture into a freight-sized Penske and drove across the country to Tacoma, Washington, where I'd taken a job as a visiting English professor at Pacific Lutheran University. For 1 year, I'd teach and write, and Kate would finish her dissertation. Colin was hurt, disappointed, pissed off. As far as he was concerned, I'd checked my balls at the Ohio state line. Order up quick, ladies, Biggie says, tapping his mag light on the bar. Time to make with the rock. Colin rakes his stack of drink tokens. Joe the Animal isn't going anywhere, he says. Biggie and Ricky C beat it to the band side to run the guitars through one last tuning. And Betty, the bartender, raises her eyebrows to ask who wants what. I'll take 5 Budweisers, Dave says. How many you want, Pooch? 4, Pooch says to Betty. Then he flips his last token toward Dave. And 1 Percocet, Pooch says. While the drummer and rhythm guitarist negotiate their buzzes, I slide over to Colin, who's alternating between coffee and beer, a poor man's speedball. I ask him where he found the coffee. Small's Bar is in Hamtramck, a part of Detroit you wouldn't want to explore at night on foot. King Video and Convenience Mart, he says, across the street. He makes a wafting motion over the cup. It's not bad. I'm getting notes of beef jerky and pork rind. Betty is lining up beers 2 at a time, and Dave is reaching into his coat pocket, fulfilling Pooch's painkiller prescription. Out on the road again, I say to Colin. We needed to get out of the house and rock a little bit, he says. You made it happen. I raise my beer to him. Credible bars, visible cities. I don't give a shit about the gigs, Colin says. It's great just to be hanging out with my friends. Like Colin, I'm jacked to be back with the guys, but as we stand here sipping beer, I have no doubt he does give a shit about the gigs. We all do. We need this tour to tell us there's still a place in rock and roll for old lizards like us. But neither of us can say as much, not out loud, not when we're about to take the stage for 5 people. Soon Biggie's heading our way. He looks ready to beat somebody down. Seriously, he says, let's go fucking go. I shoulder my bass and walk to my usual spot in front of Dave's drums. Pooch stands to my left, plugging his Les Paul into his amp. Colin's bending to his overdrive pedal at stage right, tweaking the knobs. Satisfied, he twists the volume on his Telecaster and hits 2 searing D chords. Wank, wank. Then Pooch flips his amp standby and joins in. Wank, 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 wank. I thump a couple 8th notes to make sure my rig is working, feeling the low rumble in my scrotum. After 5 months grading essays and keeping office hours, these noises, distorted and raw, add up to a beautiful racket. Dave pops his snare a few times, tightening the lug nuts until the drum cracks the way it ought to. And then he looks to Colin, who nods and mouths, "Go, Dave, go." And the drummer launches into Sucker Punch, tonight's opening song. Colin jukes up to the mic and counts 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and finally, Watershed is off and rocking. I sing the first line, and with the house lights down and the park hands shining in my eyes, I can't see the audience at all. I can almost fool myself into thinking we're headlining for 20,000 up the road at the Palace of Auburn Hills. For the boys in row J and the girls in row K and the poor suckers back in row double Z. I know that as soon as I take 2 steps to the left where the lights aren't directly in my face, I'll look out and see Joe the Animal and bam! I'll be right back at Smalls, playing for 5 people. But that's okay. There's no point worrying about the 19,995 who didn't show up tonight. Our job is to play for the 5 who did. So Dave will chuck his drumsticks to the ceiling and catch them without missing a beat. Pooch will jump like a young Pete Townsend, putting the exclamation mark on a big chord. Colin will hop across the stage like the bastard son of Chuck Berry and Angus Young, spitting beer into the lights and urging the audience to clap and sing along. And the show will end with Colin and Dave flat on their backs, the stage littered with guitars and cymbal stands and beer bottles. All the while I'll be thinking, go ahead, call it a comeback. Watershed's back in the van, back on the road, aiming toward Chicago and New York and a big-ass room in Columbus. But first, tonight, topping the bill in Detroit, the main event in Motown, arena or no, we're headliners. And the word will rattle around my skull, carrying me through the between-song silence until the moment immediately after the show when I take the piss I've been holding for an hour. And there, on the wall above the toilet, I'll read graffiti that says, "Some nights you headline, some nights you just play last." Thank you. I'll stop.